Hey friends, I'm Michelle Markey, and today I'll share the top things to keep in mind as you file your taxes for tax year 2021, especially if you got child tax credits or the third stimulus payment. And I'll go over some of the common tax prep e-filing options and what are some of the costs or which ones are free, as well as there's a new IRS rule that may affect small business owners, so stay tuned for that as well. And be sure to like and subscribe to my video and YouTube channel, because even though I'm not a financial advisor or a tax expert, I do my best to be on the lookout to help all of us along our personal finance journeys, and I greatly appreciate it. Thanks. Let's start off with some key 2022 tax filing dates. And as of January 14, taxpayers could begin filing their tax returns. And then as of Monday, January 24, the IRS will begin accepting and processing tax returns for 2021. And normally the due date is April 15 every year for taxes to be filed. But this year, because April 15 is on Good Friday and there are a few other holidays, the tax deadline is actually Monday, April 18 for most states. And for those living in Maine or Massachusetts, the deadline is actually Tuesday, April 19. And October 17 is the deadline for those who request an extension to file for their 2021 tax returns. So all in all, the IRS will begin processing your tax returns as of the 24th of January, and then you have basically until April 18 to get all of your tax stuff done. You're going to want to submit an accurate tax return to avoid headaches later on. So make sure you gather all the related tax documents as you're getting ready to file. And this includes if you had earned income from a job or an employer, so they'll give you a W-2 form, as well as if you got bank interest, you might have a 1099 INT form, or you might have 1099 forms from other kinds of things, as well as if you were self-employed, you might have a bunch of tax receipts that you're going to need to file. And if you were eligible for the advanced child tax credits or the third stimulus payment that people got usually in January 2021, then make sure you have that information on hand as you go to file as well. And the fastest way to get your tax refund or to know how much you still owe the IRS is if you do online filing, or also known as e-filing, and select direct deposit, and try to avoid paper if you can. Like in this day and age, and especially with how the IRS suffered a huge backlog last year and also in 2020, you're going to want to make sure you do as much as possible online to have the fastest chance of getting your tax refund this year. And it's reassuring that the IRS anticipates that most taxpayers will get their refund within 21 days if there are no issues with your tax return. And be sure to research and know ahead of time what your e-filing options are, because some of them are free, such as how the IRS opened up their free file on January 14. So taxpayers who had an adjusted gross income or AGI of $73,000 or less could file for free their tax returns with certain tax filing companies. And there were 8 online providers the last time I checked. And be sure to look into the details of each of these providers' offerings, because they're not all the same. Like some of them have AGI limitations of up to $65,000 or $39,000, and not all of them allow state filing tax returns for free. So be sure to look into each of these details if you're interested in any of the 8 providers, as I could see on the IRS website for now. In addition, if your returns are fairly simple, there are more free online ways to file your taxes with some of the popular tax filing companies like H&R Block, TurboTax, and TaxAct. And for me, it boils down to a combination of how much filing my tax returns is going to cost me, as well as if these tax filing companies are offering me the forms that I need in order to file my tax returns properly. So when I look through some of the offerings, what I like to look at is what's being offered across each of the basic online self-filing options, because I don't need to go for needing extra tax advice or help, so I don't go for the more expensive options. I usually like to do things on my own, so I'm super into DIY. So for me, I just go for whatever is the lowest price and gets me the right forms. And so if I look at some of the offerings, they're all pretty similar. Like with H&R Block, TaxAct, and TurboTax, we can see that they all have a free offering as well as a deluxe offering, and then also a premier or premium offering, and finally a self-employed offering. And if we look across each of these, we can see what basic categories are associated with them. But the one that I think did the best job of kind of indicating which types of forms you might need depending on what type of thing you need to file for was H&R Block's explanation, where we can see if we're getting a free filing, we can get it for simple returns, students, unemployment income, and W-2 employees, and the child tax credit or CTC. And if we go for deluxe, then we have HSA contributions, child and dependent care expenses, itemized deductions, and with premium, we can see rental income, investments, or sold cryptocurrency. And for self-employment, this is for contractors, gig workers, and other self-employed work. And you also have asset depreciation and vehicle and home office expenses. And we can see this was pretty comparable if we look at TaxAct, where similarly for free, it was for simple filers with dependents, or if you got unemployment income, or if you go for deluxe, that's for homeowners or those with childcare expenses and student loan payments, or if you go with Premier, that's for investments and sale of home or rental property. And if you're self-employed, that's for freelancers, contractors, and business owners. And again, we see a similar thing with TurboTax, where it's free for those who have pretty simple returns, or if you want to go with deluxe, you maximize your tax deductions and credits, or with Premier, this is for those with investments and rental property, and for self-employed, it's for personal and business income and expenses. So across all of these offerings, they're very similar. So just look into the details of what each of these are offering, and I'll also remark on some of their prices in a moment. And if you're in a position where you have to pay to file your tax returns, it's better to file your taxes as early as possible in the tax season rather than later, because some of these popular tax filing companies tend to raise their fees for filing your taxes the later in the season it gets. So be sure you don't delay and file your taxes right away. And in addition, when I looked across some of these popular providers in general across the board, TaxAct tends to be the cheapest, but they're not always absolutely the cheapest depending on what you need. And then H&R Block offered middle of the road pricing, where they were generally more expensive than TaxAct, but less expensive than TurboTax, which had the highest prices across the board. But depending on what you need to file, some of the tax forms are cheaper with some of them than others. Like if you need to file your state tax return, then this is actually cheapest with H&R Block, which charges $37. And this is lower than what TurboTax charges at $39. And these are lower than what TaxAct charges at $45. And TurboTax's $39 is the current pricing. It could go up to $49. So it might end up being the more expensive the later in the tax season it gets, but generally these are what some of your pricings will be. And overall, the cheapest, if you needed to file both your federal and state returns, if you need the deluxe set of options, was the cheapest with H&R Block. But if you needed to do premier type of documentation, this was actually cheapest with TaxAct, and the same thing with self-employed. It was also cheapest to do that with TaxAct. So across the board, just look across what you need and go with what seems right. And you can always start filing your tax return with one, and if you find that they're not offering you the forms that you need, or they're starting to charge you too much money, then feel free to start filing your return with another provider and see which one ends up meeting your needs the most, and then submit your return with them. And if you had children under the age of 18 and you had income up to certain limits in 2021, you may have been eligible for the advanced child tax credit payments that the government started distributing in July 2021. So if you had children who were age 5 and under, you may have been eligible for up to $3,600, and they started paying out $300 a month in July. And then if you had children between the ages of 6 and 17, then you may have been eligible for up to $3,000 per child, and the government paid out $250 a month. And so there were 6 months that the government paid out half of this credit so far, and you should be expecting a letter in the mail that is the letter 6419 about these advanced child tax credits. And then you should file your 2021 tax return in order to get the second half of these child tax credit payments. So you may have gotten, if you had kids 5 and under, $1,800 in 2021. So in order to get the rest of the $1,800, you should file your tax return to get that remaining credit. And the same thing with if you had kids between the age 6 and 17, to get the remaining $1,500, you should file your tax return for 2021. And if you don't get the letter in the mail, don't worry. Make sure you check if the information is accurate by going to the IRS's Child Tax Credit Update portal, where you can see what payments you should have received. And if you didn't receive any payments and you should have received payment if you were eligible, then you can also take certain steps to make sure you get the full credit for these child tax credit payments. And just one more note, the IRS can't issue refunds before mid-February if you qualified for either the child tax credits or the earned income tax credit, which is for low to moderate income earners who had earned income of less than $57,414 and a few other conditions. So just keep this in mind, that the earliest you might get your tax refund is starting after mid-February. And if you were eligible for the third stimulus payment, or also known as the economic impact payment from the American Rescue Plan, you should have received this payment in January 2021. And then you should be getting a letter in the mail from the IRS called letter number 6475, detailing the information about how you should have received this third stimulus payment. And if you didn't receive it, you can file your 2021 tax return to claim the recovery rebate credit. And that's how you can get your full third stimulus payment if need be. And also check online for the IRS's resources about more information on the recovery rebate credit. And also, if you might still also be eligible for the 2020 stimulus payments under certain circumstances, you can learn more about that on the IRS website too. In addition, the IRS has a helpful top 5 things to remember when you're filing your tax returns article, where I covered a lot of these points, but some additional ones just to bear in mind include how you should try to use as much of the many IRS online resources before you try calling the IRS, because there will probably be lengthy delays, as well as if you're waiting for your 2020 tax return, there are some tips to help you start filing your 2021 return, and you don't have to wait for your 2020 return to be processed in order to file and submit your 2021 tax return, as well as there are some free resources to help you if you need help doing your taxes, like this volunteer income tax assistance program, as well as tax counseling for the elderly programs, and these can be really helpful for senior citizens as well. Also, if you have student loans and have been making payments on them in 2021, you may be able to deduct a certain amount of interest on these student loan payments. So make sure you know as much as possible regarding what tax benefits you may have with regard to some of your educational expenses and student loans. Finally, there's a new IRS rule for businesses that are accepting payments via third-party payment systems or mobile payment apps like Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, Cash App, and more. And originally, these third-party payment systems would need to report the gross income if a business had income in the amounts of $20,000 or 200 transactions. And now, effective January 1, 2022, they will now be reporting the gross income for businesses that had at least $600 of commercial payments in 2022, and this will need to be reported on the 2023 tax returns. So if you're a small business and you've been accepting payments, you'll be expecting this 1099-K, starting with if you've had transactions amounting to $600 or more in 2022. So this doesn't apply to if you're just splitting a meal or utility bills across your friends and family, or if you've had a reimbursement or gifts via some of these apps. This is just for businesses and commercial transactions. So I know this might have been maybe initially worrisome for some everyday people using Venmo to just exchange some money that you needed to split a bill over with your friends or family, but it doesn't apply in those situations. It just applies if you're a business getting income via these channels. So just keep this in mind if you're a business and you need to have the 1099-K form in order to report the income that you got through these means. I know filing taxes is not most people's idea of a good time, but I think with these tax tips, you'll have a successful tax filing season, and there will be hopefully a pot of gold of tax refund waiting for you at the end of the rainbow. And if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and I wish you well on your journey to getting the most out of your taxes so that you have an awesome personal finance journey, both in 2022 and beyond. Thanks. Until next time.